Hi, it's Earth Computer, and today I want to show you how to do wireless redstone in vanilla Minecraft. So I'm going to flick this lever. You can see it's not connected to anything here, and this light should turn on. There we go. So why might you choose to use a wireless signal rather than a wired signal? Well, first of all, if you're going a long distance, then it uses a constant amount of resources no matter how far you're travelling, and also a constant amount of effort to build. So you could go from world border to world border and not have to build a massive wire in between. Obviously, wired would not be an option there. There's no lag spike whilst the signal is being transmitted. Often with wired redstone you get a big lag spike when all the redstone dust turns on or off, depending on the type of wireless or type of wired redstone. And also, no matter the type of wired redstone, you will always get lots of chunks being loaded during or while the signal is being transmitted, and for wireless, no chunks in between have to be loaded at all. And of course, the most important reason is that wireless redstone is just cooler. But there are a few reasons not to use wireless redstone. Main one being that it's broken in 1.13, unfortunately. So if you want to future-proof it, then I'd go for wired. If you're using it for something that is broken anyway in 1.13, which includes pretty much everything I've shown almost, then it's an option certainly. Or if you're not going to update for a while, then you can use it. Another reason is it only works in the overworld. If you want to transmit a signal in the nether wirelessly, then you will have to go in, put the signal into the overworld, then wirelessly transmit it in the overworld, then put it back into the nether to a portal. And another reason is it's overkill for short distances, and the transmitter and receiver must be permaloaded. So let's take a look at what's actually happening. So this is what happens in the tick, and the tick phases which are important to this. Actually, I missed one. There's mobs spawning in between the player phase and the tile tick phase. But the tick begins, the players can walk around and load chunks and stuff, and by loading chunks they can reset the RNG. And then in between, mob spawning can scramble the RNG quite a lot, but not if you have 4 mob switches, then the mob spawning doesn't scramble the RNG. And then the tile tick phase, and a lot's going to happen here. Basically all of the wireless redstone happens in this phase, and a lot of the redstone happens in this world. So instead of putting this here, I've kind of expanded this out into a bunch of other signs, which we're going to look at in a moment. And then a bunch of other stuff happens in the tick that we don't really care about, and then the tick ends, ready for the next tick. So let's look at what happens in the tile tick, which we're interested in. Begin tile tick phase, and then potentially some other stuff could happen. Maybe some chunks are loaded by some redstone somewhere, maybe some dispensers are fired, which means the RNG is advanced, like that. But there'll be a bunch of redstone happening there, and then we're going to send our wireless signal by loading a chunk and resetting the RNG, and then immediately afterwards, nothing else happens in between here, we're going to receive the wireless signal. So send, then receive in the same tick phase. And then after we've received it, some other stuff could happen again, which we don't really care about. And then we're gonna, if we have more than one wireless connection going at the same time, we could send another wireless signal in the same game tick again, in the same tick phase, and then immediately receive it again, and then maybe do some other stuff, and then the tile tick phase is over. So all this is in like sub-tick accuracy. I think it would be a good place to start by not starting with the transmitter or the receiver, but starting with how we synchronize the two. So basically we have the same clock here and the same circuit here as we do on the transmitter end. This is the receiver. And basically what that means is, because the same components are running at the same time, in the same game tick, the only thing the game has left to choose the priority between them is the actual time it was stuff was triggered first. So we have to trigger the transmitter first. Let's go over there. So we activate the transmitter, and this stuff is all going to happen. Everything here is going to happen before the receiver, and we want that because we need the signal to be transmitted before it's received. The daylight sensors here are because daylight sensors run on a 20 game tick globalized clock. That means that we can use them to synchronize two clocks which are arbitrarily far away in the world, and make sure the clocks are synchronized and everything happens in the same game tick, which is cool. And then we're going to go back over to the receiver, and we're going to turn on the receiver. You can see the exact same clock is turning on here, and that means that we know that the chunk over there is being loaded immediately before the dispensers are, or before the signal's being read. We're reading it with a dispenser. Let's talk about how the receiver works first. So obviously we have to load a chunk, but the main problem is we have to load it at the right time in the same tick phase, synchronized with the receiver. Did I say receiver before? I meant transmitter. So this is the transmitter. So basically, when we want to send a signal, we bud power this dispenser, this dropper even, and then because we don't want to actually power the dropper or update the dropper when we bud power it, because then the stuff will be sent desynchronized from the receiver. We want to update it, synchronized to the receiver, so that the receiver will be able to receive the signal without any interference. So if we would send a signal, let's simulate that by placing a redstone block here. This thing's now bud powered, and you get the idea. This here is a zero tick generator. We need to zero tick the rail so that because otherwise the dispenser would be updated twice, and that would mean that there's a chance that this signal could bud power the dispenser, not the first time the dispenser's updated, but the second time, and that would mean that the item gets fired into this dropper, desynchronized with that clock, and bad stuff happens. So I guess the only thing left to talk about is how the chunk is actually loaded, because that's not obvious. The chunk is over here, and basically what happens is this dispenser fires an item and into this dispenser, and then this dispenser, because its inventory is updated, it says, hey, there's a block here, and we don't know yet, but there could be a comparator behind this block which needs updating. So to check whether there's a comparator behind this block, we have to load the chunk, and once the chunk's loaded, it realizes that the comparator's not behind the block, but by then it's too late and the chunk is already loaded. So that's how that works. The receiver works by the random velocity of items, so it could happen here that when the item's fired from this dispenser, that it triggers the tripwire. That's going to happen about 1 in 3 times. The other 2 in 3 times the item is going to pass under the tripwire, and all this is based on the random velocity of the item, which is randomized by the world RNG. And so if the world RNG is not reset, we can assume that it's random, and we're going to get lots of, like, because this runs on a clock, we're going to get items passing through here, and we don't know whether it's going to trigger the tripwire or not. If we trigger a lot of tripwire, then any one result on its own is very unlikely. So what we do is, once we've reset the RNG, we expect there to be one result, so we know which items are going to trigger the tripwire and which ones aren't, and so we've encoded that in the positions of the redstone blocks and the T flip-flops here. And then if all of the dispensers happen like we expect, then we are pretty sure that this can't be just a random event, and we've actually sent a signal, and then this lamp turns on with an AND gate over here. This budded rail line here ensures that all of the dispensers trigger like one after the other in the tick phase, and on the other side we have an AND gate. This is probably way more expensive than it needs to be, but hey, it's kind of a prototype almost. But these redstone blocks, if you want to receive the signal, they all have to be over here, which means that all of the pistons are bud powered at once, which means that when this piston is updated, the update chain can go all the way to the end and the lamp turns on. So this is my world seed manipulator tool. We're going to use this to figure out which configuration of like whether the items will trigger the tripwires that we expect. So first we have to enter the world seed. Let's say it's 1, 2, 3. We're going to go over to the wireless tab, because there's the options we need here, and then we enter the coordinates of the chunk that the transmitter is going to load. So this is not chunk coordinates, by the way, this is block coordinates. And then we're going to talk about advances in a minute. Bits is the number of units that of like tripwire dispenser units that you have in parallel. The more you have, the less likely that white noise is going to send a false signal. But I would recommend not going above 48 and not going below maybe 16. So I've left mine at 32. Number of receivers 1. We're going to leave it like that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. This option's important. It's which direction the droppers in your receiver are facing. So in mine, I had mine facing east, so you've got to make sure to set that or it will get you the wrong result. Okay, and then we're going to press calculate, and a binary number is going to appear under here and also in the output tab. So I'm going to go into the world and explain what these 1s and 0s mean. So we're going to look at how the 1s and 0s are encoded in this. So basically 1 means that the dispenser is going to fire the item through the tripwire, and 0 means that it's not going to fire it through the tripwire. So the first dispenser is the first 1 or 0 that you read in the binary number. The second dispenser is the second bit you read, and the third one third, and so forth. And this instant rail line is going to trigger the dispensers in the order of furthest first, and then so it goes from furthest to nearest. So this dispenser is going to be the first one that triggers, so this one's the first 1 or 0 that you've got to look at, and then this is the second, this one's the third. And over here it's encoded so that a 0 is where the redstone block is next to the repeater, and a 1 is where the redstone block is attached to the sticky piston when the machine is off. So here we've got it's just the start of it is 0 1 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 1 and so on. So that's how you have to encode this. Otherwise you can just straight up copy the contraption. There's going to be a world download for all of this. So yeah, let's talk about interference. So although the transmitter is going to transmit its signal immediately before the receiver, and we know that the receiver is extremely unlikely to receive a false signal from white noise, that doesn't mean that there aren't other ways of receiving a false signal. Namely, there are other ways that the RNG can be reset. So if I would walk across the chunk border here, I've probably done that already, that means that the RNG has been reset and the wireless receiver would have detected that and would receive a false signal. So we've got to find a way to prevent that problem. Like, also, the player walking around doesn't have to be the thing that messes up the RNG. Like, mob spawning would probably scramble that anyway. But also there could be redstone somewhere else in the mansion region that messes stuff up. But I've came up with a solution, and it's this guy here. So this, these advances here, there's 10 advances, they trigger immediately before this triggers, which means that if the RNG is reset by something before, it will then be advanced 10 times so that it won't give the same results as if it had been loaded by that chunk, which means that for it to give the same results you would have to go out and find a different mansion region, which would be a very difficult task indeed given how many bits there are. So that's kind of what we want, and but if we are sending a signal, then these advances are going to advance the RNG, but it doesn't matter because we then reset it anyway. So basically this nullifies any sort of interference we could get from resetting before this clock. Let's talk about building a wireless network in your world and the things you have to consider. So transmitters, if you're going to have multiple transmitters in your world, they're grouped by which mansion region they are in. Mansion region is an 80 by 80 chunk region, so it's quite large. And if you have two transmitters in the same mansion region, then that means that they would by default transmit the same signal which the same receiver would detect. So to prevent that, well, basically you have a maximum number of transmitters per region, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and the transmitters within a region are distinguished by their advances. So let's actually go and have a look about what that means. So these advances over here, all of these at the moment trigger before the chunk is loaded, but to distinguish them, maybe we could have one where one of these advances is removed and moved over to where it would trigger after the dispenser here. So that would count as a different like transmission, which that one wouldn't receive, but a different receiver could have received that. And the maximum number of transmitters you can have per region is defined by the number of advances you place in each one. So I placed 10 here before. That means I could have had 10 transmitters in this region. To get the binary code that you need to receive over here, you use the advances text field in the tool. So for here I've removed one advancer and put it over there. Well, I haven't put it over there because I can't be bothered, but I would have put one over there. That means in the tool I'd have had to have set the max advances to 1, and then that would give me a new binary code, which I would encode a new receiver to receive this transmitter now. If you're going to have multiple receivers per transmitter, unfortunately there's no real easy way to do that. Receivers have to be aware of each other, which means that if you're going to have a second receiver listening to the same transmission, the second receiver has to know that there's going to be a first receiver listening before it. And same for a third receiver, it has to know that there's going to be two other receivers before it. And there's a setting in the tool which allows you to set the number of receivers, and that will give you the binary code that each receiver would have to listen to that transmission. And use of custom payloads. Custom payloads are quite powerful, but they're also relatively complicated, so I'm not going to go over them in this video. Maybe a future one, I don't know. But if you are using custom payloads, I'm going to kind of assume that you know what you're doing anyway. If you use them, you cannot have multiple receivers if you're using a custom payload. The original idea for using this for wireless Redstone came from Tuno. He's one of the guys who has been helping with the RNG manipulation, and also I had a bit of help with these two contraptions because you know, I'm not very really that good at Redstone, but I did come in and build these two things myself and made a video about it, so hopefully you found this interesting. If you decide to build this in your world, please let me know, because I'm interested in like why people would want to build this. And yeah, thanks for watching.